We've got our concerts table, and we've got our ticket holders table. All that's left is tying them together with the tickets table. Let's start by reusing a lot of the code we have here. First, let's change all instances of ticket holders to say tickets. And then, let's start looking at the columns. The ID column actually looks okay. So let's keep moving with the concert ID column. Let's change first name to concert ID. And instead of using a varchar, let's make this a small int to match with the ID from the concerts table. Also, since this column should always have a match in the ID column from the concerts table, we'll want to add a constraint to make sure we don't insert any concerts that don't exist. This kind of constraint is called a foreign key constraint. When you have a column that only allows values from another table's primary key, you refer to that column as a foreign key. To add a foreign key constraint in SQLite, you just add references after the data type, then specify the table and add the column and parentheses. So right after small int, let's type references, concerts, and then in parentheses, ID. Perfect. Next up is the ticket holder ID column, which is another foreign key. Let's change last name to ticket holder ID, give it an integer data type to match what's in the ticket holders table, and finally add the foreign key constraint by adding references, ticket holders, and then in parentheses, ID. To finish up the table, let's get rid of the email column and delete that last comma. Then let's start working on some insert statements to help make sure everything's set up correctly. Since we're using auto increment, we're fine leaving null for the IDs. But let's delete the rest of this data before we move on. For the first two insert statements, let's insert values that match up with rows in the concerts and ticket holders table. Let's go with 1 and 3 for the first one, and 8 and 2 for the second. So if we wanted to check, say, this first one, we would make sure that there's a concert with the ID of 1 and a ticket holder with the ID of 3. For the last two inserts, let's test that our foreign key constraints are working like they're supposed to. Let's change the third insert to have a valid concert, but not a valid ticket holder. Maybe something like 5 and 5,000. And for the fourth insert, let's do the opposite. An invalid concert, but a real ticket holder. Let's go with -10 and 4. Now let's talk about what we expect to happen when we run this. We'll start by dropping the table, if it exists. Then we'll create the table and insert the first and second rows just fine before failing on the third row because of the foreign key constraint. Let's run it and see what happens. Yikes! It inserted the bad data. It turns out that in SQLite, foreign keys are a feature that you need to turn on. So at the top of the query, let's add a new line and type pragma foreign underscore keys equals on and add the semicolon. Then let's run this again, and perfect. We failed the foreign key constraint. And if we look over at the tickets table, it only has the 2 valid rows in it. Back in our query, now that foreign keys is turned on, we can get rid of this line. Now, let's change the invalid data and see if we can't get everything to work. Let's change 5,000 to 1 and -10 to 4. Run it again, and there we go. We're finally done creating our tables. In the next video, we'll investigate what you should do if you end up needing to make some changes.